Hi, my name is Bruno Aziza, and today I'm going to share two things about my passion. One of them is analytics, and the other one is soccer. So I think it's a great opportunity to use the FIFA World Cup in South Africa to take you through these concepts so we can understand not only just the game, but the difference between an infographic and an analytic, for instance. So I'm going to go fairly quickly through my presentation and give you a few resources, but of course, if you have more questions after this, you can always get a hold of me through these different websites, and you can email me directly at bruno@brunoaziza.com. So the first obvious question is, what's an infographic and how is it different from an analytic? Well, an infographic, think about it as a visualization, a way that allows you to understand quickly complex information. A great example of that is a calendar that I'll point you to directly. You can see the link at the bottom. Let me show you how this actually works live on the web. Great way to navigate through the information. You can go by day and see what are the upcoming games. If you support a particular team, for instance, you can see when they're playing next. And if you're in South Africa and you want to know the games that are playing in Johannesburg, for instance, you can see the lineup here. So here, a great example of an infographic. Lots of complex information allows me to find it very quickly. Another great example is what La Información is doing with almost, I want to say, real-time information on their games. And you can see, again, if I took you to the live version, you can put your pointer over the different players, and you can see how many passes have gone through them. It allows you to understand a little bit more about the game. Now, what's interesting about this, and the hero behind this infographic, I think, is Shiki Esteban, because he exemplifies what needs to happen in order to get to insight. Sometimes some of the information is not captured in systems. So here you can see he's actually gone with paper, making sure he captures all the information, transcribes it to a website, and makes it available to us, the fans and supporters. So congratulations to Chiki, and thank you for your commitment with the sport, but also great example for how organizations can think about analytics. It's not always going to be in the system. Sometimes you're going to have to work around so you get to the result that you want. There's a lot more of information available in newspapers as well as web publications, such as Information is Beautiful or sharing not just the information itself, but also how they're using it to predict the winner. So, for instance, in this example, they're predicting that Brazil is going to do. Wall Street Journal is also doing the same thing, where they're predicting that Brazil is going to win. So what this really takes us to is the types of analytics you can gather as the game is going through, but also the types of insights you can get at the analytic level. So you've got schools and banks that are trying to use macroeconomic analysis to predict who's going to win. These are great examples, and they're trying to identify correlation, if you will, between macroeconomic and a performance of a team. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but in fact, if you look at the data, they'll find that the correlation is almost inverse. So the lower your GDP is, the more chances you might have to actually win the cup. If you need more information on that, the New York Times has published a great article that gives you odds of teams as well as their GDP information, so you can check that yourself. So much for infographic and the type of analysis that can be done out of it. Now I want to transition to analytics, which in my definition here, an analytic is going to be logic, a metric, a set of logical rules that are going to get you to a particular index or something you're looking for to give you specific insights. So we talked about historical indicators. Here's an example of an analytic that I called Penalytics. It's basically the analytics of a penalty kick. As you know, penalty kicks are used for a shootout and to determine who's going to win a particular game, and they're used as a tiebreaker. They've been used since 1978. And you can see here, ESPN Insider provides all the historical information of penalty shots taken throughout the World Cup. You can see they're colored differently if it's a right-footed or a left-footed shooter, and if it's a full circle, it means it actually scored. If it's an empty one, it means it was missed or stopped by the goalie. So taking all this information, you could predict, basically, if you're a left-footed person, where you're going to take the shot and what your highest probability of succeeding is going to be. So an example of a left-footed player, for instance, you can see that if you took a shot in the middle, which apparently happens 31% of the time, you'd have a 75% chance of winning. Now, what's interesting about this data is, in fact, that's where apparently most left-footed players take a shot. And in fact, that probably is not where where they should go. They should go to the top of the goal. As you can see here, they've got the highest level of probability. Of course, you got the same data coming from the same historical information for right-footed people, and you could take a look at what my recommendation for a player and a goalie is. But you can imagine that you can even evolve these analytics and use them as the game is evolving. So that's an example of an analytic. Now, there's examples out there of websites such as Sports Illustrated that gives you what I call basic reporting. And you can take this basic reporting around how many assists, how many shots on goals, how many yellow cards, and turn this information into an analytic that works for you. That's exactly what I did by looking at what I called mood indicators. Basically, trying to identify, based on the last 3 games that a team played, what mood should they be in. And really, the information is the combination of 2 metrics. One is did they win, tie, or lose the game, and what was the rank difference between them and the team that they played. So if you take the example of the US, for instance, you can see that they first lost, then they won, and then they finally won against Australia. But if you look at the line below, you can see that the difference in ranks between the US and the teams that they opposed was going down, meaning they're getting closer in level each time. So that gives you a sense of the trending and how these teams should feel. So in the case of the US, they should feel good, but in case of France, they actually should feel pretty bad, because as it's becoming easier for them, they in fact are losing. You can see the loss against China, where they have a difference of 75 in FIFA rank. Pretty depressing. There's a lot more information available about how I came up with this indicators on my site. In fact, I talked there about the US and their strategy called Project 2010, which is a way for them to become a serious contender on this World Cup. I highly suggest that you take a look at it if you like soccer. It's a great read. There's other places where you can create your own analytics. The New York Times has created this heat map on figuring out what's happened in the game. So in the case of Germany against Australia, you can go out and determine how many touches, how many balls were won, what the possession, and so forth. And what you'll notice here, which I've done for just a few teams, just as an example, is you'll see that in fact possession is not an indication of how well the team runs. In fact, look at the Germany game, 54% of the ball, so 50-50 really against Australia, but you can see them dominated the number of touches, and you can see the importance of certain players both offensively and defensively. Mertesacker, for instance, highest number of touches, meaning probably passing a lot of the balls. With Lamb and Schweinsteiger, you can see here the largest number of touches, but also stealing the largest number of balls, 23 balls won against the opposing team. So these are great examples of how you can use existing information from websites out there and then create your own analytics to derive specific information. In this case, was the team not just possessing the ball, but were they actually efficient at passing it around and winning it against the opponent. A last piece of information that I want to leave with you is this concept of ad hoc. You can think about ad hoc reporting, ad hoc analytics. The Guardian has a great site on this. It's fairly rudimentary in the analytics to give you, but they also give you the ability to rate players, which I think is very interactive for fans. They do this throughout the year. They've got what they call their chalkboards, which you can use if you support the EPL, the English Premier League. You'll be able to play with that as soon as it starts again. They don't have that for the World Cup yet. What they do have for the World Cup is the data blog. So every game that finishes, they actually provide you with the data dump so you can do your own analysis. A great site for you to visit. And then finally, there are social media analytics. There's a company called Extended Results that's mining the entire social media sphere, blog, YouTube, Facebook, what have you, in order to figure out the buzz out there. I highly recommend that you take a look at this one because it's an innovative way of thinking about how people are talking about the game as it's evolving. But of course, all these analytics are interesting, but there's a big part of the emotion around the game. And in fact, it's an indication for us to think about decision making in the enterprise. It might be that you have all the information that you want, structured, unstructured, and so forth, but a lot of it has to do with how tied you are to the decision. And that's why I wanted to show you my bracket, because I know that you've seen me analyze a lot of information, and in fact, some of the calls I might be making might be more emotional than data-driven. So if you have any thoughts on my bracket, let me know what you think. I disagree that Brazil will win. I think that Argentina will win just based on the lineup and what I've seen them do so far. If you are in the U.S. and are able to follow the World Cup, I highly suggest that you go to ESPN. This is probably, for me, as a soccer fan, but also an analytic fan, the best way to view the games. I'll actually show you what it looks like. It is pretty amazing. You're able to not just have the analytics. You can see here, I can point, that's what they call the game cast, I think. You could point the goals, the tactical formation, where people started. I could see a heat map based on players, so you could see where a given player was, which makes really the information pop up here, and you can work with it and be very informed. But more importantly, if you wanted to see what the last goal was like, you could simply press here, and as you can see right away, it's playing the goal for you, and you can go over not just the goals but also the yellow cards and so forth. So ESPN, a great way to mine information, make that available to you, but also appeal to your emotional sense and give you the information in a way that you can consume. With that, that's my quick analysis of my top 10 infographic and analytics. I'm sure there's a lot more out there, but those are the ones that I've been using, and I hope that they've been useful for you too. I'll talk to you soon.